Are you looking to easily run a Playwright test for the Power Platform in an Azure DevOps pipeline? Well, today I'm going to show you how, with an extension I have written that allows you to easily access a model-driven app and conduct tests on that app using Playwright. I'm Tech Tweedy. Let's get started. Okay, so if I just share my screen here, and if I bring up my Azure DevOps environment, as you can see, I've got a couple of organizations here, and I've got a project called Tutorials. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install DevOps extension. So if I come across to the Azure DevOps extension marketplace, if I scroll down, and if we look at recently added, we can see we've got the Playwright or Power Platform DevOps extension. Just going to press on Get It Free. Now on that page, we can see important information about what steps are available within our DevOps extension. The most important thing though is it requires a Windows runner. But if I just select that, I'm going to install this inside of my Tech Tweedy organization. And then press on Install. And then if I press on Proceed to Organization. So I can go into my organization settings, and I can come down to extensions, and I can see that this extension is installed. Okay, and if I click onto it and go back to the place, I can view the information about this extension. So this extension is produced by me. It will only run on a Windows runner. It's completely free. There's no charge for it. And it executes Playwright tasks within your pipeline. It's also open source, so you can have a look at the inside of it and see how it works. And finally, it generates reports in HTML, JSON, and JUnit XML. Now, the JUnit XML is what DevOps it takes in. The other thing it does is it captures screenshots, videos, and it captures network traffic. Quite a useful extension. Let's see how we can make it work. If we dive in and we're going to create a new repository. Let's create a new repository and let's call it Playwright 1. Just hit create. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add some tests. So if you haven't used Playwright before, I'll do another video on how to create tests. But in this particular video, we're going to create some tests. So we're going to add a folder, a file and a folder, and we're going to call it Playwright tests. And we're going to add a file within that folder called 03 add contact spec.tf. If we just create that, now I will add this code into the blog post that we use, and also in a future video I'll show you how to generate it. But what we have here is we have a contact being generated. So we have a Faker API, and we get one quantity of one of first name, last name, and email. And then this is the code that we use to input that in. Now I can show you, like I say, in a future video how to record this code, but today I'm just showing you about the extension. I'm going to commit this to my repository. Brilliant. The next thing I'm going to do is come down into pipelines and create a new pipeline. Now the pipeline I want today is a YAML, and I'm going to select a repository, which is going to be Playwright 1, and then I'm going to choose starter pipeline. Now what I've got here is I've got some code, and you'll notice that it by default comes with Ubuntu latest. Now we need to change that. So I'm just going to copy and paste in some code from a previous pipeline. And once again, this will be available in boilerplate, in the blog post. Once again, this will be available in the blog post. Delete that, don't need that, and we don't need that either. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our Playwright task. I'm going to search for Playwright, And here it's given us a couple of options. So the first thing we've got is test location. Now, the location of our repository, so the repository we just created, as far as this pipeline is concerned, the root of that repository is called system.default working directory. And then within that directory, we placed it in Playwright tests. Now, as default, it's expecting it to be there because I wrote the extension, and that's what I decided. But you could call it something else if you wanted. And we're going to put trace mode on, just so we can have a look at it. Now, the URL for my Dynamics or model-driven app is there. And as you can see, it's tech3d.crm11.dynamics.com, and then we've got the app ID on the end. Now, the app name is NDA Playwright Testing, and my username and password. Now, my username, I may be quite happy to pop it in here, but my password, I may not be. So for this, we use variables. So we can create a new variable here, and we're going to call it 0365 password. I'm going to add this off screen. And then what you need to do in order to keep it secret is you need to select keep this value secret. This lets Azure DevOps make sure your password doesn't get revealed to anyone. Finally, we're just going to include this in our pipeline by copying this value here. And we're using the YAML reference, save that, and then we'll paste that in there. Finally, we have our output location. So this is where we're going to save all our test results to and all our stuff to. And this is set to the default working directory. You can set it to whatever you want. But today, for demonstration purposes and to make sure everyone can see what's going on, I've got it set to the default working directory. Now, finally, because we're dealing with a YAML pipeline, let's select line number 14 and let's press add, because it will add it wherever we select. Brilliant. You can see that's gone in quite nicely. The next thing we need to do is we need to grab our Playwright report. Now, our Playwright report comes out now into a directory called Playwright report. Now, we've set this as our output location as being the default working directory. So we need to pick that up again here. What we're going to do is we're going to grab that Playwright report and we're going to publish it as an artifact. However, before we do that, actually, we also want to put it into a zip file. Let's pop that zip file in. And the reason why we're going to pop it into a zip file is just to make it easy to download. So you can one-click grab everything, and that will become clear later. Finally, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to publish our JUnit report. So if I copy and paste this in, and once again, you'll be able to access all of this from the blog post. We've got our Playwright report. Sorry, copied and pasted too much there, didn't I? We've got our published test results. Now, the test format for these results is JUnit. Click on this settings, we can see I've got a couple of different options. But the Playwright outputs results in JUnit, and that's the only one available in our list to use. We're looking for any results that have this pattern, so any XMLs that carry this, and then we're going to search our working directory folder. So the next thing for us to do is to then commit all these changes. So we're going to search for commit to repo. Now I have another DevOps extension that performs a commit to repository, and what we're going to do on this commit message is we're just going to grab date, PR number. I'm going to pop that in there. We're going to commit to the main branch. We're not going to apply any tags. Now make sure we select back on line 44 before we press on add. Brilliant. That's going to give us our commit message. Okay, so we now have our pipeline ready to go. I've updated this value here. So we've got our test location coming from Playwright tests. Our browser has been updated to Chromium because we want to make this a bit quicker. We've left trace on. Now this will mean our test takes slightly longer, but I want to show you what the trace looks like. And then our output directory that we've chosen to use will be system default working directory. Next, our app URL. We've got our app URL declared here as being our model-driven app. Then we have our app name and our Office 365 username, and then our password, which is stored as a secret. The next thing it's going to do is it's going to take our report, our Playwright report that it kicks out, and it's going to zip it up into Playwright report so we can easily download it and look at it. And then we're going to publish this artifact. And in fact, probably just want to, no, I'll leave it as it is. I'll leave it so you can see both parts of it, but you may just want to publish the zip file. The next thing it's going to do, and the final thing it's going to do, is going to publish the test result. So it's going to look for a JUnit test result, and it's going to publish that. So I'll show you what that looks like. And then finally, we're going to commit everything to the repo. Now, you may not want to commit everything to the repo. When you come to do yours, you may want to put some of these into the artifact staging directory or stick them somewhere else, because you won't necessarily want some of these files living in your repo forever. It would seem fairly pointless and unnecessarily blow your repo. But for today's demonstration, we're going to do just that, so you can see what happens. So let me hit run, and we'll give that a go, and we'll see how quickly it runs. As you can see, the first thing it does is it checks out the pipeline. Next, it downloads the task and starts running it. And this one takes quite a little bit of time, not only to install it, because it has to install it each time because it's going to a fresh machine essentially, but also because then it has to undertake all the tests. So as your tests grow, expect this one to really start to increase. Don't be surprised if it does. And of course, if you run out of time, just split it into a second set of tests. So you could run, a second job, for instance, if you hit any limits. Or what you could do is you could run a parallel job, and you could have one lot of tests go down route A and one lot of tests go down route B. But more complex things like that, I can show you in future videos. But today, I'm just showing you how to essentially get Playwright to work. As you can see now, it's installing the npm dependencies, and this is something it has to do in order to work. And unfortunately, it has to do this each time. Can't make it run any faster. It's one of those steps that takes a bit longer. Okay, so as we can see, Playwright tests have finished, and it finished in 3 minutes and 20 seconds, which is not bad, but there's only 3 tests there. And if we scroll down, we can see it installs the various different parts of the solution. And then you can see on line 112, jumped up a little bit. On line 112, it copies our test across into the testing folder. Then it runs our tests. Once it runs the tests, it puts the traces in and the outputs of the report. And then it copies them across. And then finally, it closes the task. After that, it then archives the file, puts it in test report, and then it publishes the artifact, which is that zip file. And then also it publishes the test result. So let me show you that working. What we have here is we have one published artifact. We've got our Playwright report. We've got this report, it kind of expanded. But you may want to just upload the zip file and download the zip file, and you'll get a Playwright report that looks very much like this. When we come into here, you can see we've got the authenticate passed successfully. We were able to log in. It's really good because that comes as part of the task, the DevOps extension I've written. And then we've got add contacts. And you see this one's come up as flaky. And that's because the first run took 31.7 seconds and had an issue. And we can see what that issue is. You can see it just doesn't seem able to enter in the information. Almost like it can't get rid of that blue box. However, we have a look at the second run, retry. Let's have a look, see what happened there. It loaded up the page. Was able to click on contacts. Was able to get rid of the blue box, enter first name, last name, and an email address. And therefore, that was successful. So if we come back and we have a look at our tests, you'll see we had 2 passed tests. Fantastic. Well, as you can see, this DevOps extension allows you to run Playwright tests and authenticate and log into a model-driven app. In fact, the authentication method should work with any of the Office 365 products, but this one is particularly written for Power Platform, and I've shaped and named it around Power Platform. Not just model-driven apps, you can also use it against Canvas apps or Power Pages if they're protected by Azure AD. I will produce some future videos to show how this can be used in other ways, but until then, please like, subscribe, and comment below if you want to see this used in a particular way, or you want to find out how this can be used against a certain scenario. I'd be more than happy to create content and help everyone. Until then, stay safe.